Cyber risk is human risk. The real problem is not human behavior. The real problem is systems designed to depend on perfect human behavior. As one guest put it, the real vulnerability is our humanity, our cognitive biases and errors, which can be weaponized. Most breaches still begin with credential theft, phishing, or social engineering. Insider incidents often involve no advanced malware at all, just normal workflows. Security architectures must assume human fallibility and contain inevitable mistakes, especially around identity and access.
Welcome to the Cybersecurity Readiness Podcast Series with Dr. Dave Chatterjee. Dr. Chatterjee is the author of the book Cybersecurity Readiness, a holistic and high-performance approach, a Sage publication. He has been studying cybersecurity for over a decade, authored and edited scholarly papers, delivered talks, conducted webinars and workshops, consulted with companies, and served on a cybersecurity SWAT team with Chief Information Security Officers. His work on proactive cybersecurity has been featured on USA Today. Dr. Chatterjee has been a tenured professor at the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia. As a Duke University visiting scholar, Dr. Chatterjee teaches in the cybersecurity programs at the Pratt School of Engineering.
Greetings, listeners and viewers. I'd like to begin by thanking you for your strong support over the last 4.5 years. Never in my wildest dreams or imagination did I expect that the Cybersecurity Readiness Podcast will reach episode 100. This episode marks a moment of synthesis rather than celebration. Over nearly 100 conversations, one pattern has become undeniable. Cybersecurity has crossed a threshold. It is no longer confined to defense or compliance. It has become a discipline of trust. This episode reflects on what organizations have learned, often through painful experience, about why trust collapses, why recovery is slow, and why readiness consistently outperforms reaction. A quick note of disclaimer: the purpose of this presentation is to share thoughts, insights, and reflections from the Cybersecurity Readiness Podcast Series. The intent is to enhance public awareness. The structure of this episode mirrors the journey of the podcast itself, from origins and intent to contributions and impact to the core messages that have emerged over time. This is not about highlights or volume. It's about extracting durable lessons that leaders, boards, and institutions can carry forward. This is really a moment of synthesis. It's also a moment of reckoning. Cybersecurity has crossed a point of no return. We can no longer frame it as a purely technical function, nor as an episodic crisis response activity. Across industries and across continents, we see the same pattern repeating itself. Trust collapses faster than systems fail, and recovery takes far longer than anticipated. This episode or this series isn't about volume, it's about meaning. It's about what organizations have learned, often painfully, about why readiness consistently outperforms reaction. A little bit of a historical review. What began in June 2021 as an experiment inspired by the vision and enthusiasm of Mr. Thanur Sapolia, then an undergraduate student at the University of Georgia, has evolved into a platform grounded in research, teaching, and advisory work. From the beginning, the focus was intentional: depth over noise, learning before crisis, and sustained insight rather than episodic reaction. Over time, the conversation shifted from tools and controls to trust, resilience, and enterprise credibility. That evolution mirrors the evolution of cyber risk itself. The podcast has evolved into a globally recognized platform for advancing practical, strategic, and human centered cybersecurity thinking. It demonstrated sustained relevance across practitioner, academic, and policy communities. Now, in its fourth year, the series is approaching 100 episodes, reaching listeners in more than 117 countries and surpassing 14,000 downloads. At its core, the podcast has contributed in 5 key ways. Number one, it helped mainstream cybersecurity as a leadership imperative. It bridged strategy, technology, and human readiness. Number three, it curated insights from practitioners and thought leaders. Number four, it generated actionable learning for education, training, and research. And last but not the least, it has built global reach and credibility. Some of the podcast episodes have inspired the authoring of teaching cases published by Ivy Publishing and distributed through Ivy Publishing and its partners, such as Harvard Business Publishing and the Case Center. For those interested in exploring the full archive, the series is available through 2 primary portals. The first is the Cybersecurity Readiness Podcast.com, and the second is hosted through my professional website, dchatty.com, which also provides additional context and integration with broader research and teaching efforts. Together, these portals reflect the platform's commitment to accessibility, continuity, and long-term learning. What distinguishes this podcast is not production volume or headline chasing. It prioritizes depth over sound bites, thoughtful, substantive dialogue over hype and alarmism. The conversations center cybersecurity on readiness, resilience, and trust, not crisis-driven fear. The platform integrates academic rigor with real-world practitioner experience, producing learning that is both credible and usable. And perhaps most importantly, it offers longitudinal insight, a multi-year view of how cyber risk and organizational responses evolve over time. Collectively, these qualities position the podcast not merely as a content channel, but as an enduring knowledge platform. Major cyber failures are rarely caused by missing tools. They are caused by weak governance, unclear ownership, and leadership hesitation under pressure. One guest summarized it perfectly. When you examine major corporate scandals or breaches, it is never the widget that fails. It is leadership, governance, and accountability. Courts, regulators, and insurers increasingly view cyber incidents not as unforeseeable technical events, but as foreseeable leadership failures. Cyber risk oversight now sits alongside financial controls and safety governance. This is not a future condition. It is a present expectation. So that's the first message that comes out from episodes 1 to episode 99. And the message again is cybersecurity is now a leadership and governance issue. Message 2, reaction is no longer a strategy, but readiness is. You cannot respond your way out of systemic cyber risk. Tabletop exercises without rehearsal, plans without muscle memory, compliance without intent, all of these create a dangerous illusion of preparedness. As one guest noted, emergency responders perform well because they practice constantly. Cybersecurity should be no different. In reality, ransomware recovery often stretches into weeks or months, not days. So preparedness is not a document. It is a capability, and capabilities must be rehearsed, measured, and funded, not assumed. Message 3, cyber risk is human risk. The real problem is not human behavior. The real problem is systems designed to depend on perfect human behavior. As one guest put it, the real vulnerability is our humanity, our cognitive biases and errors, which can be weaponized. Most breaches still begin with credential theft, phishing, or social engineering. Insider incidents often involve no advanced malware at all, just normal workflows. Security architectures must assume human fallibility and contain inevitable mistakes, especially around identity and access. Message 4, AI has compressed time, scale, and consequences. AI or artificial intelligence didn't just accelerate attacks, it collapsed the buffer organizations once relied on. The distance between deception and damage has narrowed dramatically. Deepfakes and voice cloning can now be generated in minutes. AI is not a labor reduction strategy. It is a decision quality challenge, a governance challenge, and ultimately a leadership challenge. I authored the book, The Deepfake Conspiracy, which became an Amazon bestseller in December, to enhance global awareness of this AI-enabled deepfake attack phenomenon with disastrous consequences for individuals and organizations. It is a cyber thriller exploring AI-driven deception, deepfakes, and trust breakdowns in the digital age. Message number 5, identity has become the new control plane. Across dozens of episodes, identity emerges as the most consistent point of failure and leverage. As one guest summarized, attackers no longer break in, they log in. Stolen credentials remain the number one breach vector. Zero trust and passwordless approaches succeed only when leadership treats identity as strategic infrastructure, not IT plumbing. Because identity failures are trust failures and they propagate instantly. Message 6, validation of the commitment, preparedness, discipline, CPD framework. Across nearly 100 conversations, the commitment, preparedness, discipline framework continues to hold, not because it resists change, but because it was designed for human complexity rather than tool churn. Its endurance is a feature, not a limitation. Commitment reflects leadership intent and accountability. Preparedness translates that intent into practiced capability. Discipline sustains both through governance, measurement, and continuous reinforcement. This empirically derived, holistic approach to cybersecurity governance does not prescribe tools. It shapes behavior, decision-making, and organizational posture under pressure. A little bit of a deep dive into the commitment pillar or commitment dimension. Commitment reflects the tone at the top. It embeds cybersecurity into the organizational DNA through shared responsibility, board-level ownership, sustainable budgets, and empowered CISOs. It builds a culture of collective accountability, reduces human error, strengthens third-party risk management, and elevates cybersecurity from compliance to strategic differentiation. Preparedness. Preparedness translates leadership intent into operational readiness. It operationalizes commitment through planning, capability development, and rehearsal. It includes risk assessments, asset prioritization, access controls, encryption, and robust incident response and business continuity planning. Preparedness enables rapid containment and recovery while reducing regulatory and reputational exposure. Discipline. Discipline institutionalizes cybersecurity as a living practice. It includes governance, continuous monitoring, audit drills, penetration testing, and red team exercises. Discipline ensures adaptability, accountability, and measurable progress, so security remains dynamic rather than reactive. Message 7. Looking forward, what boards must internalize now? The next chapter of cybersecurity will be defined by trust by design architectures, identity-first security models, embedded AI governance, continuous rehearsal, and boards that treat cyber readiness as a standing fiduciary responsibility. Cybersecurity no longer protects systems alone. It protects trust, and trust, once lost, recovers far more slowly than technology. As I close out this episode, I'd like to reiterate that episode 100 is not a celebration of endurance. It is a reflection on what endurance has revealed. Organizations that frame cybersecurity as a technical function will continue to be surprised. Those that treat it as a leadership discipline will earn resilience, credibility, and trust over time. And folks, I conclude by thanking you again for listening, for engaging, and for being part of this ongoing conversation about readiness, leadership, and trust. Thanks again. Take care.
The information contained in this podcast is for general guidance only. The discussants assume no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of this podcast. The information contained in this podcast is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantee of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness. The opinions and recommendations expressed in this podcast are those of the discussants and not of any organization.